Each year, Microsoft Research hosts hundreds of influential speakers from around the world, including leading scientists, renowned experts in technology, book authors, and leading academics, and makes videos of these lectures freely available.
I actually made two PowerPoint slides, but then decided what was the point of plugging in a computer for two PowerPoint slides. The two PowerPoint slides were going to be basically my two alternate titles for this presentation. The first being a sort of Clay Shirkian provocational assertion, what a difference a game makes. And the question I'm trying to get at is, Liz, are you going to just sort of discipline me in terms of time? Yeah. Okay. The laser beam is getting my eyes. The question that I wanted to bring to the group here today is what is the role, what is the place of games in social spaces, in virtual community, in online spaces? Because we talk about them a lot and we sort of dance around their place and their effect on community, but there's a kind of skittishness around, taking them seriously. Anyway, so the question was, I was going to assert that games, in fact, or I was going to pose this title, that games, in fact, do make all the difference, but I just can't bring myself to quite be as provocative as Clay. So the real title is, what difference does a game make? I'd like to think a little bit about what the gaming context brings to social spaces. And being here, though, at this conference has made me think about it in terms of, I think we kind of, as a group of people looking at these spaces, kind of have an authenticity problem. And it used to be the big thing. When people first started talking about virtual community and the importance of social spaces, it was the thing we all had to face, the question from every interrogator who had never spent time in the well or any place like that. How can you call these places real? This is all just taking place, in bits and bytes. There's no, physical interaction. There's no serious commitment to the space. And I think, the history since then of the proliferation of spaces, the familiarity of places like AOL and every sort of community that people are familiar with now, has made that not such a problem for us. We don't have to explain that so much, and yet it persists. Even here, I heard yesterday the question of, is community being misused? I think is this a real space that we're talking? I mean, is this a real community? And again, in the session about World of Warcraft, there was this kind of anxiety about, well, why are we all in this game? And our first answers were all to Stephen. Well, it's all these wonderful people who are here in the game, and it's really about the community. It's not about slaying furbolgs, 3,000 times in order to be able to get your trinket of mass, insomnia. And yet, there's no denying that the game plays some kind of key shaping role in forming that social bond that draws us. And so my question is, what is that key social role? I just want to kind of frame the discussion. I don't actually know the answer, but I want to frame it in terms of two sort of canonic stories that helped me think about and helped us all answer that question in the first round of discussions back in, the early 90s about virtual community. To answer that question, are these real spaces? The one was the rape in cyberspace story that I wrote about, in which in Lambda Mu, a textual VR, there was a guy character committed a virtual rape using the sort of fictions of that context to commit this act. And then the community rallied around this transgression to figure out what to do with this. And we were able to tell a story about that showed that community can exist in these spaces. The functions of community, whether or not it's real or not, is another question. But the functions of community and the feelings and the sort of, on one level, the authenticity of them. The other story that I always think of in terms of that moment is an image from Howard's book, The Virtual Community. It's that there was was a moment in the well where somebody's kid was very, very sick, and there was this moment where you have this incredibly intimate post that he's talking about I'm hovering over my child, and you have this sense of being right there with him. And these, to me, are the sort of two sides of the question. And there was a certain kind of person that would be inclined to say, no, that's the moment where community is really happening, where we're connecting with people's real lives through these spaces. We're connecting through this window out back into the real world. Whereas with the rape in cyberspace case, it was a fiction that was wholly referential to what was going on within that world. There was a little living room space in which this rape took place, but nothing was happening out in the real world as far as the reference of action, the circumstances, the occasion for action, and even then, to point to this example, you would sort of have to say, well, but the rape was not the important part. The important part was how everybody got together and dealt with it. And if I were provocative, I would say, no, that was actually the real one. That was the real community space because it was something that everybody could organize around. Everybody in the space had equal access to that space, whereas in the other one, it was a case of a kind of long distance, peering through a telescope at somebody else's life that nobody could actually take part in, but that was somehow given access to. I want to say that no, actually both are sort of equally important ways of thinking about virtual community, but that we have an embarrassment still to this day about acknowledging the importance of the fictional moment, that sort of moment of the virtual rape or the slaying of the furbolgs or whatever it is that brings everybody together in this space. And so rather than saying, that's actually more of an authentic virtual community, I just want to say, what is it about that aspect of virtual communities, the fictive, the game-like, the ludic, pretend aspect that's impossible to get away with these. It's possible to get away from in these spaces if you are going to create a context that everyone is equally in touch with in this space. You have to have a game on some level, but how important is that? What does it do? And how can we stop being embarrassed about talking about it?